Hi everyone. So in these last two videos, we will discuss very interesting open research area in which are basically neural networks that are aided by explicit memory, right? And so far, recurrent neural networks are actually implicitly memorizing information, right? By capturing long-term temporal correlations, you can think of it as they are that these kind of networks are basically remembering what happens in past values of a sequence at the past time steps, right? But explicit memory is different, right? You can think of it as the difference in humans between subconscious memory, like when you drive, for example, you remember details which are subconscious, and conscious memory, which is deliberately recalling facts, right? Now, memory, even if you think for the case of humans, can enable multiple paradigms in learning, right? So one of them is basically capturing long-term temporal correlations. Another is the ability to process the input differently at different time steps, right? And what that means, it means that basically you don't have, whether in training or during inference, to access the whole network at the same time. Maybe the input can be processed or affect only a small part of the network, right? And that's similar to our attention mechanisms, right? So when we pay attention to something, we recall the relevant memories, and then we update these relevant memories based on what's happening right now, right? So that's the second thing that memory can enable, right? So just to recap the little discussion that we had so far, explicit memory is useful for having, not only for capturing long-term temporal correlations, but for having a network that processes information differently at different time steps. And that can enable having a large general purpose network where small parts of the network are activated at different time steps in a data-driven way based on the input. One of the close examples that we discussed in this section related to this is the SLIM networks, or the self-delimiting neural networks, that are basically used as a mechanism that has a halt symbol, and based on the halt symbol, it knows where it is in the sequence, it knows the start of the sequence, and based on the weight changes at the start of a sequence, it decides which part of the network to access, right? So these SLIM networks were not only for determining the sequence length, but it was an attempt along these lines of having a general purpose network or multitask network. And every time in a data-driven way, you access and update only small parts of this network. An interesting reading related to this idea of processing the input differently at different time steps is that 1990 paper by Hinton called Mapping Part-Whole Hierarchies into Connectionist Networks. Now, one of the recent attempts in 2014 on implementing neural networks with memory was basically on implementing a supervised memory network with an addressing mechanism. So you have an addressing mechanism like the one that you have in general purpose computers, and and by the way, this memory model in general purpose computer is called the von Neumann model, right? And it's basically location-based addressing. So you access a location in the memory by providing the address of that location. And in that recent publication called Memory Networks, it's also a supervised memory network, meaning that you train the network to, you tell it during training, or the label information provide guidance on what the network should memorize for every set of training examples. Now, also a more recent publication that's very interesting and a topic of the last project in this course is neural Turing machines. And also one relevant work to neural Turing machines that is actually the implementation that is in the project is called memory augmented neural networks, or MAN, M-A-N-N. So neural Turing machines are different from the supervised memory networks in a sense that they don't require supervision, they don't need training on what they should remember. And also, and very importantly, the addressing mechanism is not location-based addressing, but rather content-based addressing, right? Similar to what we believe we do as humans, right? So we access part of the memory by seeing something or remembering something that is similar to it, right? So for example, you want to remember the name of someone, then you see the face of the person that helps you remember the name. Right? If you see someone tells you the first letter of the name, that helps you remember the name, right? So you actually access the data by the content, by similarity, right? So you have a key to access the memory, and that key is similar to the content, right? And interestingly, neural Turing machines has this content-based addressing. It has a soft version of it. Soft meaning continuous and differentiable, right? So that you can work it out with gradient-based optimization, right? Moreover, so that not only the addressing, the addressing mechanism is soft. Basically, you read and write, right, through a weighted average of many cells. So in traditional computing, you access a memory location by you access one memory cell at a time. Right? You don't access 0.7 of a memory cell and 0.3 of another memory cell. That's what neural Turing machines are doing, right? So they remember content. They access by content, by a key that is similar to the contents of memory cells, right? And when they write, so it could be similar to the content of many memory cells. Right? So there is a similarity when the reading, there is a similarity metric between the key and the content of the memory cells, right? It could be very similar to the content of one cell, a little bit similar to the content of another cell, and so on. So it's a weighted average, right? And writing takes place in a similar manner. So when we write, we don't write to one, it's not discrete. We don't write to one location, we write to a group of locations by continuous weights. Right, such that the weights sum up to 1. So, and the coefficients are chosen to be focused on a small number of cells, and this is done through softmax activation. Because softmax is basically the soft or differentiable analog to the max, right? And max means discrete. I access only the maximum. Softmax, I access almost only the maximum, but I access the others as well. Right? So this exponential in the softmax is what helps neural Turing machines focus only on a small number of cells. So in general, softening discrete operations is very important for converting traditional computation or traditional computing operations into learnable operations, right? Of course, when using gradient-based learning. So the next video, we will focus all the video on the addressing mechanisms, and we'll start with the content-based addressing mechanism in neural Turing machines. Thank you.